It's in the little bitty things that you don't think matter. That's what matters to your children. And so I have a fun twist on it. I use the letters of the alphabet. So it's like 26 ways your child spells love, right? So it can be as little as I'm going to open the book. So, for example, chapter 4 says love is dancing, right? And then I have a story there about the child and how that's helped this child and brought the dad and the child closer together because they danced together. And then, like, chapter 5, love is an embrace. And there are kids who need hugs. And there's science between hugs, right? And
yeah, there massively is, which we don't talk about enough, do we?
yeah, no, for real.
I just wanted to start this episode with a message of thanks. Thank you to everyone that chooses to listen to this podcast. By doing this, you're enabling me to reach more people so that they might learn how to unchain the pain to live a healthier, happier life. The feedback that I get from those that take action and are inspired by the show's content is incredibly rewarding. So I'd like to ask you a teeny tiny favour. You are truly able to change the course of this podcast, the types of guests I have on this show, and everything that I do by doing one simple thing. And that is simply hitting the subscribing button. The guests on this podcast are incredible because so many of you have hit that button. When I think of what I want to do this year on this show, this is fueled by the amount of you that subscribe, that tune in, and that comment on the show's content. So please keep subscribing, keep commenting. Any type of comment, please keep them coming, and keep sharing the shows that you find inspiring. I can't wait to see what this year brings for this show, for you, for my community, and for this platform. Thank you.
Welcome to the show, Brain Health, Unchaining Your Pain. I am so excited to be talking to the wonderful Dr. Hokehe Eko today, who we connected with back on episode, I think it was 68, but I can't find the details. So
that was a long time ago.
It was a long time ago. And I'm so excited. I didn't realise you were just down the road.
Yeah.
Down the road in a US sense, 3 hours away. So hopefully we'll be able to connect in person, seeing as I'm in the States at the moment. So
yeah.
Welcome to the show.
Thank you. So glad to be here again. And so nice to see you and catch up with you.
Yeah, it's great, isn't it? And for those that don't know Dr. Eko, she is a brain health expert guiding leaders and teams to thrive. She's a mum, a pediatrician, a TEDx speaker, nonprofit founder, and is passionate about helping both children and adults boost the health of their brains so they can thrive in every area of life. And I know last time you were on the show, we talked about children's brain health, and I think it's going to be such a great topic to continue talking about, because since we last spoke, you wrote your book, didn't you? Children's Love Letters.
Yes, I did. Thank you. And thank you for having me on the show again. Yes, so I wrote this book called Children's Love Letters. I think I have it right here if you can see it. Oh, I think I'm blurred.
Yeah, it's fine. We can see it. I'll put a link to the book in the show notes.
So the question is, why did I write that book? Well, I'm a mommy of 3 kids, like Dr. Ruth said, and just trying to figure out my kids. And so I had this idea, and as you're a young parent and you're growing up with your kids and you keep hearing children just need time, and time is the way children spell love. And I kept thinking, isn't there more to this whole love thing? And so having the 3 kids like years apart, so it's like I have a 16, 12, and 7-year-old, and so they're like in all different stages. And I just kept thinking, wow, each of them is so different. Each of them has different love languages I could point out, because then I started intentionally like studying them to see what is it that makes this one really light up and what makes the other one really light up. And it's not the same for each of them. So I got this idea to write a book for parents, just to, number one, just stress the fact that your child spells love in more ways than just time spent with them, right?
Mhm.
It's in the little bitty things that you don't think matter. That's what matters to your children. And so I have a fun twist on it. I use the letters of the alphabet. So it's like 26 ways your child spells love, right? So it can be as little as I'm going to open the book. So, for example, chapter 4 says love is dancing, right? And then I have a story there about the child who and how that's helped this child,
Mhm.
um, and brought the dad and the child closer together because they danced together. And then, like
Oh.
chapter 5, love is an embrace. And there are kids who need hugs, and there's science between hugs, right? And
Yeah, there massively is, which we don't
yeah,
talk about enough, do we?
yeah, no, for real. And see, hugs increase trust. Human touch is essential. Hugs trigger release of hormones like oxytocin. Hugs offer security to children. And I know before we started, we talked about children's health broadly. There's and you said the difference between children who are loved and children who are not. Like, take the children who grow up in orphanages, right? They're not
Mhm.
touched, they're not really spoken to, maybe just saying here's food. Those children often, they are smaller in size, their brain sizes are smaller.
Mhm.
They don't often grow up to their fullest potential, versus the ones who get adopted. Like, you can tell the difference, into a home of love, filled with love. They do so much better developmentally, because as humans we're wired to need love. But
Mhm.
the key is finding how your child really spells love, and it takes intention, and it takes putting down the phone, parents. Yes, and I'm talking to myself too. Putting down the phone, looking them in the eye, and just connecting with them. And in the book, I have spaces for you to write in, because I want it to be an active thing. It's not just reading. Like, write your thoughts. How are you going to spell love to your child today? Like,
Yeah.
based on the different chapters. So yeah.
And I love that. And reading your book, I love how you introduce it, is the importance of loving ourselves first and
Yes.
understanding if we're not loving ourselves first, getting curious, not furious about the reason behind why we don't love ourselves, and not to imprint that on your children, or try and transfer your historic trauma, if you will, to the present situation that you're in with your child, which for me is really important.
Yes.
Yeah,
It's
I love that.
Yeah, it's very critical. It's actually critical, so critical, that we parents do the work on ourselves intentionally, to address the hidden traumas, the known traumas, all of it, right?
Mhm.
Dr. Ruth and I, both of us were just talking offline about scanning our brains and checking our own brains to make sure they are healthy, and the changes we can make, right? And
Yeah,
so it's the same thing. It starts there. Parents, we have to love ourselves. I think everybody should have a therapist. I have one. I think everybody needs
yeah.
somebody they can talk to, including the therapists themselves. They need
No,
therapists.
I agree, because when I've had my brain scan recently, as we were
Right.
talking, is the fact that I have past emotional trauma, and although I do am a havening practitioner, it's really hard to treat yourself.
Yes.
You have to get somebody else to help you, because
Right.
it's easy. You need a guide to guide you up a mountain where you don't know when you're going to fall over.
Hmm.
So it's really important that we get the right therapist or the right support to
Yeah,
help us
because
with the
we
task.
all have blind spots. The ones we intentionally blind ourselves to, and the ones that we
Yeah,
really can't see. And so you often need somebody. I mean, it could even be your kid pointing out, "Hey, mom, but you're doing the same thing you told me not to do." That should is instead of us reacting in anger, that should make us pause in our tracks and say, "Wait, hold on, I need to work on myself." And that's happened to me. That's why I can say that. I would hear myself telling my kids, "Don't yell at each other," and then the next 5 minutes, who's yelling? Me. And then, of course, my 7-year-old, who at an earlier time I had told, if mommy is yelling, just say something. Of course she did. She's like, Mommy, you told us to stop yelling, and now you're yelling. So I had a choice, right? I either say, hey, whatever, and or say, or like put her down, or I say, you're right, and I slow myself and my brain waves down and stop yelling. So, and
Yeah.
thankfully I chose to do that. I mean, sometimes it's annoying and you just want to get the thing done, but it's so important for us to show the things that we're trying to teach our kids, because our kids learn from what we do more than
Yeah.
even what we say. And
I
so,
love that you said that, because there's, at home, my daughter very quickly, she's called Lily, quickly picks up on shouting, and she really hates it. And she says to me often, if I, she just doesn't listen. As children do, they just kind of zone out, or they
right,
choose to not listen, and you say it 100 times and they still don't do what you ask them to do.
right,
And so you end up raising your voice in the hope that will actually change the
right,
situation, and it really doesn't, to the point that they can't deal with the volume.
right,
And so she says to me, Mummy, you don't have to shout if you're angry.
right.
You don't have to shout just because you're angry, Mummy. And they're like, yeah,
Right.
you're right. I don't. Thank you for pointing that out. But it would be really helpful if you just did what Mummy asked.
Right. And then I like to say, help me help you. Let's help each other. Let's all help ourselves.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it's so important for us to have self-compassion on ourselves, because we too need the little children in us to be healed, to be loved on. And so when we don't quite measure up, it's okay to recognize what we didn't do right and just make the correction, and the next time do it. And if we fall down again, we keep getting up. That's the
Yeah.
goal. It's not to stay down. As for the falling down, it will happen. I mean, this is life. But yeah.
And I think that's really important, is no parent is perfect, right?
Yes.
We don't come with a parent manual, and it's so lovely that you've written one to help guide parents in the context of love, because there's so much we don't know as parents.
Yes.
And we end up kind of discovering it by the mistakes we make,
Right.
or we don't even realize we're making those mistakes and know how to self-correct.
Right.
So it's so lovely that you've actually written a book that allows us to pause and reflect, and at the end of each chapter to think about what is my child's love language? What do they really love, and how can I connect with that with them, so that we build a stronger connection between ourselves? I think that's so important.
Yeah, because that's really what's lasting, right? It's not the things, it's not the big things you bought and all of that. That's not what they remember. It's those times when you really truly connected with them. That's what they keep, and that's what they pass on to the next generation, right? So,
Yeah.
like, I have this memory of at 7 a.m. So my mom was a vice chancellor of a university. I think in the UK, that's what you used to, right? Vice chancellor, yeah. So deputy vice chancellor, sorry. And so she would go around to her lecturers, all the different homes of these professors, 7 a.m. in the morning. And here's me and mom, and I'm following her, and she knocks on the door and she says, "Good morning." And these people are like, what in the world? 7 a.m. Now I'm older. Then I didn't realize there was anything. I just was like, okay, mom on her daily morning trips to all these people's houses. And then she would hand them a lollipop, and you should see the smiles on their faces.
Oh.
These are like big old professors and all these university people, and they just break into a huge smile, and they're so happy because they got a lollipop from Dr. Eko at 7 a.m. in the morning. And so it stuck with me, because I'm like, now I understand, because when you share love with people, right? Even as small as that, I mean, what's a lollipop? But really, I bet they got the smile, they got the fact that she came all the way to their house to say hello and good morning and wish them all the best in their day. And then she shared a little token with them. So, little things, even just a smile, will change anybody's life and change their day. So, yeah,
I know. I think that's so important, and it's the power of connection, isn't it? So I, obviously being in the States in Dallas at the moment, connected with someone who was also going to the Omen clinics. We just, I didn't know this at the time, but we just randomly got talking on the way to breakfast, and that has made a lasting impression on both of us.
Yeah.
The fact that we have something in common, and it was a great conversation, and we'll remember that now for the rest of our days, you know. And we forget the little things, those little touch points of connection with people, and particularly our kids, can make a huge difference, can't it?
Yes, it does. And in my practice, Glow Pediatrics, I serve children with ADHD and autism, right? And especially for those children, it's so much more important because I tell parents, you want to be a detective of your child. Every child has strengths. Every child has ways that they connect with you. It may not look like anybody else, but unless parents are intentional about looking for that, they won't find it. And then they won't connect with this child that they have. So, and then, I mean, the bonding doesn't happen, and maybe the child has behaviors that you don't necessarily appreciate, but there's something about bonding with your child that even lessens those behaviors or even helps you see ways, you can think outside the box, and that you can address your child's behavior that will make it easier for both of you to live together and to be together. So yeah.
Has there ever been in a time in your life where you haven't felt that bonding or connection, either from when you were growing up as a kid or as a mom, when we first come into mumhood?
Yes. Yeah, I mean, as a kid, I was extremely shy. I know it doesn't look like it, but I was one of those kids who couldn't even look you in the eye and talk to you.
Wow.
I literally would be facing someone and would turn around unconsciously and my back to them. That's how bad it was. So I definitely didn't know how to really connect with people, and I was always in the corner hiding somewhere. So as I've grown up, and let's see, with my first kid, so it was lots of trying to figure out how to bond with this child, and I must say it's gotten better over the years, because I also could pick out that sometimes I wasn't like putting down my device or just putting my full attention on her.
Yeah.
And she'd be like, "Mom, get off the phone."
I have that too.
So I've had to learn that. And that's why I can say it to others, because I too have had to get corrected on that. And it's just listening out for what they don't say too, and just seeing what lights them up, and then you can tell that that's something that speaks love to them. So
yeah, I love that, listening to what they don't say.
Yeah,
I think that's so important, because in the world of digital distractions, like you've just mentioned, it's very easy to not be listening to that.
Yeah, definitely.
Because we're so busy with filling our brains with stuff.
Stuff that's taking us nowhere fast, actually. If you think about it, like, really.
I know. So in the context of love, what would you say optimal brain health is for you personally, in the context of the book that you've written?
So optimal brain health would be a parent who is intentional, who is present, and who make it like a game. Like, how can I find out what lights up my child's brain and what lights up my child's life? And of course, in addition to all the other things that we talk about, like sleep and making sure you're eating healthy, all of those things are important. But definitely this one of just connecting with your child's heart, that definitely will boost their brain health for sure.
I love that. And when I think about connection, I kind of think about it in 4 types of connection. So this is like the 4 quadrants of well-being. It's your emotional connection with your child, the physical connection, the importance of hugging, the spiritual connection, which is like looking at how can I connect with what they're passionate about, what is more important than just them, their passion and their purpose and their anything that's above them. A spirit doesn't have to be connection with God, it could be a higher sense of purpose. And then mental connection. So this is the connection with what, and this is probably, and please tell me from your experience, important with people who have autism, is connecting with their thought processes and what cognitively, mentally lights them up in terms of activities that they love to do.
Yes.
So it might be mathematics, it could be reading, it could be some obsession that they're really passionate about,
right.
That you need to tap into. Like my daughter, Lily, she loves playing with cars, like Matchbox cars, and if you have them in the US, and she's got like a map on the floor, and she meticulously puts them in rows and drives them around. You can't move them in different order, and if you come and play with her, you have to play with her rules.
Right.
So she has a unique brain type, right? And I'm sure people who have autistic children can probably relate. That your child has a particular brain type. They like to be on a racetrack. They don't like to get off it, and they have to have the rules of the game need to be set.
Yes, and you dare not put one and mix the order around.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so we talked about two different brain types, and there's many that lie beneath that. So children who have ADD and children with autism. What advice would you give to parents who have children with ADD? Maybe we start with the maybe not the hyperactive kids, the ones that purely have more attention deficit.
Okay, yes. So the children who are inattentive, it's important to, I always like to say, I mean, even the children who seem like they can't pay attention, there are things they hyper focus on. Yeah. So that's the key. You need to be a detective of what is it that your child really likes, because there is something or a few things that they do like, and connect on that level with them.
Yeah.
And then, the important thing is when you connect on that level with them, you can show them how the fact that they can be hyper focused. For example, if your child is hyper focused on, I want to play video games all day, right? And so you play video games with them, but you show them how playing video games, we can incorporate some math lessons into that if they don't like math, right? And so maybe you can do math for 10 minutes, take a 5-minute brain break, do some video games and come back to it, or somehow incorporate video math into what they are playing, right? And so that's a way, because number one, the fact that you came on their level and you played with them, that's already a bonding. And then you show them how their brain is actually, you can still learn math. I mean, even if you don't necessarily like it, but you can learn it because it's the same brain we're talking about. So that's one way of, that's what I would advise parents to do.
I love that. It's kind of like tagging a habit that you don't really want to do with one that you love to do.
Right. Yes.
Which makes it a bit easier. And what would you say for that? Autism is obviously a really vast topic in its own right, but for children on the autism spectrum, and this is hugely challenging for parents, how could they start to connect in a loving, compassionate way with their kids? What would be the best way to approach that?
Yeah, so kind of like what you said, going back to your example of Lily, right? And playing she likes playing with the Matchbox cars. So whatever it is that your child, and again, children with autism, there are things they're hyper focused on, and there are things that they just love to do. So it might be just taking a few minutes and playing with that thing that they love to play with. And the fact that you come down to their level and you're in their space, that definitely, then they're more likely to want to listen to you, right? After that. So again, you can tag things that they may not necessarily want to do along with the thing that they like to do. And yes, okay, so you may be saying my child is not verbal, but even then, I mean, touch and just the proximity, right, of a loved one of your child feeling loved by you being there, it definitely does wonders, more than you know. And your child can show it in a non-verbal way, right? By maybe they put their hand on yours, and so they are reaching out to you. That's a form of connection. or maybe they gesture to you to come lay down next to them because they just want to feel you close to them. So all of those things play such an important role in, along with the therapies and all of that. But we need all of those things, like you said, the 4 areas of wellness. We need all of those areas to be in place. And again, for parents who have children with autism, it's important that you're able to get some respite for yourself, because and you need to pour into yourself, and you need to take some time, even if it's an hour a day. Take some time for yourself so that you can be the best version of yourself for your child.
I love that. I love that. And in terms of the love, where we see children that are missing this connection, what are the kind of the early warning signs that you notice as a pediatrician, where that initial connect, not saying it's a big problem, but that initial connection, you notice that something is missing? What's the early warning signs of that?
Yeah, so I'm gonna tell you a story. My 4-year-old little friend who was brought into my office, and he was brought in from foster care. Foster care is where they take the children out of the home, and they, because they've experienced trauma or neglect or whatever the case is, and they're placed with the family, right? So he was brought into my office, of course, came in with, and the person that brought him in said, well, he has ADHD, he needs medications. And so the diagnosis was already given right before they showed up. And so I said to him, okay, well, tell me more. So it turned out this child had been hurt in the last home he was in. But listen to this, he had been in 10 homes in 6 months.
Oh my
So tell
goodness.
me, if you were 4 years old and you were in 10 strangers' homes in 6 months, what would you be like?
You would not be stable.
Exactly.
Emotionally, you'd be emotionally dysregulated, wouldn't you? Because you wouldn't have known, your emotions would be all over the shop.
Right. So that's exactly what he showed up as. He showed up as this kid who was running from wall to wall, hitting the walls. But then he came to me and gave me a hug. So I got like 15 hugs from this kid. And I heard myself saying, I don't think he has ADHD. I think he needs a loving home. Even I was like, where did you get that from? Well, maybe it was the mommy in me that just kicked in. And I was like, no, 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 no meds. I mean, he's 4. What meds am I going to give a 4-year-old? But even if I even attempted to maybe say, go see a psychiatrist, I'm like, let's see this out. So he looked at me like I was crazy, but he did do what I asked. So I saw this child like 6-8 weeks later, and guess what? I got one hug, because now he was sitting on the laps of this foster dad who he was calling Papa, and there was no more hyperactivity. So that's when I was like, huh. So love, right environment, can cause a child to become so regulated, what looked like ADHD is gone. And it was because of the trauma. And so, yes, so trauma, children who are traumatized, children who are not in loving environments, they can be so completely dysregulated. So that's why it's so important, before we put kids on medication, we're asking all the questions to determine what's really going on with him, with the children, right? But in addition to that, knowing that all a child needs is one safe adult. And that helps to start lowering their cortisol levels and bringing their brain, the heightened emotions, back down, and so that they can become more regulated. So, and
I
so,
love that. I love that. And I think
yeah,
it's so important that you mention this from an ADHD or an ADD perspective, because Dr. Gabor Mate talks about it as well in his books, around how ADD can often be, in some cases, attributed to past trauma, and your
right,
brain gets dysregulated as a result of your deep limbic system being super overactive. So you can't actually turn on your prefrontal cortex,
right,
which is your executive functioning part of your brain. And
right,
of course, it's going to be so much worse in kids because they haven't been able to turn it on in the first place.
and they don't know how to, right?
No,
Exactly.
no,
So, yeah,
no. I
so,
think it's so important. I love that you bring that point out, because there will be so many kids out there, and for all those parents that do have kids with ADD, is the importance of giving love, and helping them regulate themselves,
right,
to calm down their heightened emotions.
Right. Yeah, and just and understanding that they may not be able to, they can't control it. It's this feeling they have that's
Yeah.
like overtaking their frontal cortex, which is where executive function and emotions and all of that is controlled. And so it's not saying, "What's the matter with you?" It's, "I see you feel this way. Okay, why don't you take 5 minutes
Yeah.
and be in a quiet place?" And so,
Would you
or
like
just
a
deep
hug?
breathing or something, or just teaching them, yeah, how to take ownership of it and not make them feel like they're this alien person with strange behaviors,
Yeah.
So,
And giving toys a hug is really important too, right? So if you can't get it from, if the child is opposed, especially I suppose if they've got autism, they're not necessarily open to physical contact, but they might be
right.
open to stroking a toy.
Yes,
Is giving them the opportunity to get that touch
right.
in a
Yes.
different way.
Yes, definitely. That's an important one. Yes, especially with the textures and all of that. If they find
Mm.
something they love that can be a comfort to them, yes. So,
I love that. I love that.
yeah.
And are there any other examples? So as you mentioned, the four-year-old who I'm so pleased managed to get some help. As kids grow, obviously their brains develop. Are there any warning signs when they get into their teens? Because you're now a mum with a teenager. Um,
I know, right? I can't even believe that's happening, but I'm firmly in the thick of it. So yes, you're absolutely right. So um, things that can really show up are anxiety, depression. So if you see your child withdrawing, I mean, teenagers like to be on their own, but if it's more than usual, right? And if like they don't even want to be out with the family, things like that, or they're not starting to do well in school, those are warning signs you want to pay attention to, and pay attention to what they are saying, right? It's not enough to say how was your day at school, because most kids don't even answer that question. Maybe something more open-ended, like, "Tell me what you enjoyed most about your day," and then they may say, "Nothing was good," and then that gives you an opening to say, "Oh, let's talk about that. What happened?" Right? And it's just, teenagers, they may be pushing you away, but that doesn't mean you should go away. They're just trying to figure themselves out, and they need you desperately, more than you even know, right? My 16-year-old sneaks into my room and will hug me and hold me tight. But
Ah,
like outside, if we're out in public, she won't do that. She's like, "Mom," right? So it's just understanding that they're just trying to find their way and figure their way out. And if you see them starting to change, in especially becoming more quiet or even becoming louder and all of that, it could be a way they're masking what's really going on. So if there's changes, you want to just take them out on a date, right? What is it
yeah.
that your child likes to do? My daughter loves to get little gifts, so I take her to the little store, and I like, "Okay, pick out something." But while we're there, we can have conversations, and then she can open up and tell me things. So I try to date my kids like separately if I can. And it may not be
Yes.
going out. It can even be, I sit in your room with you by yourself for 5 minutes. That too is a date. But
I
just
love that.
being intentional and giving them the one-on-one time. They may be grunting to answer your questions, but don't be offended. Just show them that you are there and that you
Yeah.
are available. Yeah.
I love that. And I think it's really important, to show that you are available and there for them, to give them a hug when they need you, like your daughter comes in and gets one. Because, for me, historically, when I was a teenager, my dad was away a lot on business. He wasn't much of a hugger anyway, but I really missed him. I didn't have that dad there for me, and he was kind of like a mum and a dad at the same time, because I had a really strong connection with him. And so
Right.
I think and I got up to all sorts of stuff I shouldn't have done when I was a teen. And I think some of that, it could be attributed to the fact that I didn't feel I was able to have those parental conversations that,
Right.
and it was a different era, of course, but it's creating those safe spaces to have those conversations without judgment.
Right, definitely. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they desperately crave that connection with you, even though they may not show it. I like to stress they may not show it because usually they won't show it. So you just have to study them and see what their love language is now because it changes, right? So we
Yeah.
have to keep studying our kids,
Yeah.
right?
And I think our love
Oh,
languages
yeah,
change as well, right? So
right.
where we
Yeah,
thought we were is we're not necessarily where we are today.
right. Yes, we're all changing. And so it's just not holding on to the past picture, but looking forward to who's this new person I need to explore first with
Yeah.
yourself and then with your children. So, yeah.
I love that. I love that. And tapping into love, and I know you talk about emotions in your book and connecting with that child's emotions. I love to do the 5 pillars of brain health. So if we start with feelings, which is so the 5 pillars is feelings, actions, connections, thoughts, and surroundings.
Okay.
Feelings. What feeling or emotion is most important to you in life, and why?
That's a good question. Hmm. Feeling of joy. Because I
Joy.
think once I have the feeling of joy, I can overcome whatever crazy day I may be having or whatever may be not going well. And yeah, that's very important to me because it centers me. It helps me get back to a place of gratitude, which definitely centers me and helps me know that, I mean, the world hasn't ended.
Yeah. Well, no, I think it's really important, right? Because feelings are infectious.
Yeah, they are.
So
Definitely.
if you show up with joy
Hmm.
around your kids, they're going to be expressing joy. If you're a miserable
Right.
mum, they're
Right.
going to be miserable
They
too.
are. And the whole house will be miserable too.
Exactly, exactly. So having
Wow.
that feeling of joy, and for those listening, what is the most important emotion to you too, and why is it important?
Yeah.
Well, so next one is actions, because I want to love to tap into the mummyhood. What's the most rewarding or fulfilling thing you've ever done? It doesn't have to be mum related.
Hmm. Well, having the courage to start my own practice, that one is a big one. Yes. Oh my gosh.
I
It's been a
think
journey.
I think it's so important because when we last spoke, we talked about courage, gratitude, and resilience. That was
Okay.
the topics we talked about in the last episode. So I think we don't give ourselves enough um, praise for
Right.
the challenge it takes to do things that are difficult, and we
Yes.
should celebrate those. Like starting your own practice. I want to start
Yeah.
up my own functional brain imaging clinic in the UK. It's really difficult to get going, isn't it? So when you actually
Yeah.
realise it,
Yeah.
we should massively celebrate. I love that.
Yes.
I love that. And then finally, on the questions on connection, which we started with, is what is the most important value that guides you in life?
Truth. Yes.
I love that. Know the truth, and the truth will set you free.
Yes. Truth. Like, what is true to me? What is just truth? Truth of the world I live in, truth of the people I'm around, truth of what's going on with my kids. And just somebody talked to me yesterday about radical acceptance, like
Uh-huh.
radically accepting what it is. It doesn't mean it won't change, but for now, that's what it is, right? So, yeah,
I love that. And I think it's so foundational, isn't it? Truth.
yeah,
Because when you can be true to yourself and then know the truth, then you you don't have the uncertainty, you don't have the worry, you reduce the anxiety levels because the
right,
truth is out there.
right,
You don't have the judgment or the doubt. So
right,
when you've got the truth embedded in everything that you do, that's a wonderful thing.
yes.
So I know we're coming up to time. So I would love to know what piece of advice would you give to any parent that is struggling with connecting with their child? What would your piece of advice be?
Okay, first thing I would say is parent, you are the best parent for your child. Yes. Believe it own it and know it is true, and that you yourself, you're valuable, because only then can you make space in your brain to try and connect, or to discover how to connect better with your child. So I think it starts there, because a lot of us walk around with all this guilt and things about, oh, we haven't done this or haven't done that. Let's just let all of that go and just accept who you are, that you're the best parent for your child, and it flows from there.
I love that. I love that. And with that, how can people get hold of you, learn about what you do, get hold of your book, and if they want to have a consultation with yourself?
Okay, yeah. So website is glowpediatrics.com, and that's GLOW pediatrics, one word.com.
Mm-hmm.
And we're on all social, same thing, at Glow Pediatrics, or my name at Dr. Hokehe Eko. So the book is on Amazon right now, and also on my website. It's called Children's Love Letters, a Pediatrician's Guide to How Your Child Spells Love.
I
So,
love that.
yeah.
I love that. And it's such a
Thank you.
wonderful book. So thank you so much for writing it. And I'm looking forward to working through all of the tasks that you've
All the time. Stop saying it that way.
all the letters I need to write.
Okay.
No, it's lovely, because it's a manual, isn't it? It's like a manual
Yes.
for parents.
Yes, that's what it is. Yes. So write your thoughts in there, to go back and write some more thoughts as things evolve, right? So.
Right. And it's so easy to not pause and reflect and take time. And you can, I often read books and you don't take the time to pause and action the things that are in them. And I love the fact that you've created that space for people to do that.
Yes. Yeah.
Dr. Eko, it's been absolute pleasure, as always, connecting with you. Thank you so much for your time. It's been a fantastic conversation.
Yeah.
And hopefully we'll get to connect very soon.
Yes. Thank you for having me again. And yeah, my pleasure.
You're most welcome. Remember, everyone, this show is all about brain health, unchaining your pain. You're not stuck with the brain you have. You have the power to make it better, especially with your kids.
Yes.
And Dr. Eko has kindly been here to show us how. Thank you.
You're welcome.